You talked about the polls. That was something else I kind of wanted to talk about, because that one news poll, we haven't, it's not that we haven't covered the polls, but we've always kind of gone, oh, seats in the House, who gives a crap 18 months out. But I think the last poll going into the holidays before an election year, that's when you start to kind of pay attention to it. Now, I'm still confident in saying that TVNZ poll was currently the outlier. We've even had a taxpayers union poll come out that kind of more says what the trend is, but we won't know until the first one of next year whether it's the beginning of a new trend or it is indeed an outlier. No matter what, whether it's an outlier or not, to go into summer with this idea that, that gave the right bloc a 14-seat majority. To go into the holidays with that. So all the conversations around the barbecues, all the conversations around the coffee tables, all of those conversations are going to be, the left doesn't have a chance. And as we know, as we talked about earlier this week, Marty, research is clear that there is a percentage of the population that will vote with the winning side because they want to be winners.
Of course there is.
Yeah. So
the Greens really took the Greens really took a body blow in that poll, and I genuinely found that surprising because they have been staunch and they've been on message. I think that they've had a lack of media oxygen, but also one of the problems that we've got here, with 72,000 Kiwis leaving the country, a big chunk of that demographically is younger, and a big chunk of young votes Green. And this is a problem. And I put this to Martyn Davidson on Tuesday night's show about is this going to be an ongoing problem for the Greens? If you've got so many people who are fleeing the country because they just cannot see an economic future here. How do you counter that? And I think it will require them to have a really strong presence in Australia in terms of their campaigning to try and harvest as much of that overseas vote as they can in Australia.
Yeah. I wonder as well, this kind of ties in, I guess, to the Te Pāti Māori in that vote as well. Riding high at 7% 12 months ago after the hikoi, down at 1%. Now, on some level, the party vote doesn't really matter for Te Pāti Māori because it's the seats they win. But when you go from 7 to 1, that is significant. And I do have a question for you, Marty, because you had John Tamihiri on.
Yes.
Maybe 2 or 3 episodes ago, and you talked to him and basically said to him something like, some guys tried to overthrow you in a coup. You mentioned this. Do you still think that today, or as the time gone on, have you? Because where we are is a lot of it's like 2 of your mates are both fighting. You can only ask one of them to the party. Who do you ask them to? You don't really know. But back then, you seemed to be saying that those quote unquote rebels with trying to do a coup. But what do you think now that it's been another month? Because I feel like it's different today than what we thought in those initial stages with us, which would have been the beginning of October.
My position still stands. My understanding of the entire fallout dates back to the Treaty Principles referendum protests. Some of those involved in that within the Māori Party, Maramino, Doc, Uru, and others around them, they really saw the success of that protest as a success for the Māori Party and their view of tikanga, rather than what I always believed it to be, an amazing buy-in from across civil society, Pākehā, Pacifica, gay, union, churches, NGOs. There was an enormous group of New Zealanders who weren't Māori Party voters and they weren't Māori Party supporters, but your enormous cross-section of New Zealand civil society that stepped forward as one. Māori-led, no question, it was Māori-led, but an enormous cross-section of New Zealand coming in saying, actually, the treaty matters to us. Actually, we care about the treaty. It is our founding document. And I fear that there were some within that group who it's not a case of going to their head, but they felt that success was more a reflection of their own particular values. And there was some push and shove right after that within the Māori Party about being much more tikanga and sort of focusing on that and going down that road. That was pushed back from the Māori Party leadership because they wanted to go from being a party of opposition activists and was starting to firm, and this was the whole reset idea. They wanted
Yeah.
to firm themselves up so that they could say, hey, we can be a trusted member of a new government moving forward. Supply and confidence can be trusted with us. That was where they were shaping. Then that sort of got out of the people who were sort of more focused on the tikanga element. They were quite frustrated with that, and out of that, there was this quiet move to try and do a challenge on Debbie and Rawiri's leadership. Now, personally, I'm not a Māori Party member. I'm not a Māori Party voter. Um, but I personally felt that Debbie and Rawiri deserved loyalty for the work that they have done this year. They didn't deserve plotting. When John Tamahiri found out about the plotting, when he was tipped off about what had happened, somebody who'd been on that phone call called him and alerted him to what was going on. He responded, as John Tamahiri does, with napalm, with absolute bloody just fire and brimstone. And the focus has been on the process and criticism at JT for that process not being tikanga enough. Whereas I think the problem was people were putting their ego before the waka. They aired a whole bunch of dirty laundry out in front of the marae. And that just the self-mutilation that has gone on after that point, fired up by social media, really. It was people telling their own truths as as subjective as they were, and people getting fired up on either side, and it's imploded in this terrible, terrible situation. Um, some Maori party voters will say, "Well, you know, you're Pākehā. What have you got to do with this? Keep out of our business." But we've consistently seen with the polls, the only hope we had of getting to 51 was Labour plus Greens plus Maori Party, and everybody
Yeah.
opposed to this government do feel quite connected to this bloody situation and this is, oh Jesus, it's my greatest fear is we're going to be locked into the situation if the Māori Party can't somehow pull up from where they've fallen. We're going to have the situation where it's either National Act and New Zealand First again, or it's New Zealand First, Greens and Labour. And let's be honest, after the pain and trauma we've had of this government, Labour, New Zealand First, and Greens. That's barely a better situation. You know.
I'd be surprised, I'd be surprised if Hipkins would sign on to that. But then again, you know, to get the big seat, who knows what some people do? Is it better to have a bad situation and be on the
That's
inside
right,
and make the rules?
and that's right, and that will be what Chloe Swarbrick and Marama Davidson will be served up with, and that's what Chippy will be served up with. Winston will simply say, "Hey, it's either me or I go back to these buggers for another 3 years," right? And and that's just, I mean, that will be such a dead rat for us all to have to swallow. So what happens inside Te Pāti Māori impacts us all enormously. And that's
Well,
why they all have to pull their bloody heads in, get back into the waka, and start rowing in one direction.
and obviously the one thing that may happen is if you've got independents running in Māori seats and you've got Te Pāti Māori running in Māori seats, then Labour will just come up the middle and there'll be no overhang.
Bang, 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 you know? So, I mean, strategically, tactically, this has been a terrible way to end the bloody year.
Chewy, you've been a bit quiet over there in the
Counter
corner.
argument.
Yes.
I reject any poll that has the Greens at less than 15%.
I'm not sure that'll wish with the electoral commissioner when we're counting up the votes. No. I want to see 1-5. Look, we I think the economy is not, we're not seeing green shoots of recovery. I think we're seeing dried snot of desperation. If you look at a whole bunch of economic indicators, things are very damaged out there for people. The extra loans that are happening at the moment are not business loans; they're bloody personal loans. If you look at the liquidations, they're through the roof. If you look at the unemployment rate and the underemployment rate, the 600,000 Kiwis need food banks every single bloody month. Look, there are some New Zealanders who are doing well, but they were already doing well. The vast majority are not, and I don't see how allowing rich overseas millionaires to buy $5 million mansions is going to kickstart the bloody economy. So people are going to hurt going to next year. The thing that's really surprised me this week was all of the surprise that our new ice queen, our new Nordic ice queen Reserve Bank governor, she with glacial ice in her veins, the surprise that she might put the OCR up. If anyone has been listening to what she has been saying since she was appointed, she has talked about being laser focused on inflation, laser focused on inflation, laser focused on inflation. Well, how is she going to do that as the Reserve Bank? She's going to raise the OCR. So all of those people who have mortgages, who have just kind of felt, oh, thank God, I'm just keeping my head above water, and those slight reductions have meant a couple of extra thousand a month in the bank account. Look, that's going to go next year. Because she is going to put the OCR up, and the whole economic argument of National, which has been we've lowered your mortgage rates, vote for us again. That's going to be a difficult song to sing when the OCR starts going up next year.
So we need here, like this conversation of the government bloc and Labour debating the economy in the same terms, in interest rates and OCR and all of this sort of stuff, is a loser. It's an absolute loser, and I just want to shake people, anyone, strangers, maybe we'll get to that, to say you need to tell people that all of this stuff, yes, it has an effect on their life. But it has a bigger effect, as you said, on the people at the top end of town. Turning around and going, hey, look, you voted for National because you don't think Māori should have any say in water, or you don't understand trans issues, or all of these sort of things pale in comparison to the fact of, have you looked at your shopping bill? Like, this is something that affects everyone, right? Did you get a pay rise at work this year? Was it more than inflation? Did you have any interaction with the healthcare centre? How are your kids doing at school? These are things that cross borders. It's not about the unemployed. It's not about the blue collar worker. It's not about the lanyard worker. It's not about the white collar. It's everyone. These are all interactions that we all have. But I see Labour especially running headfirst into a fight that they have lost before, and they just don't seem to be learning the lessons that are out there. We've already referenced Mamdani's campaign. I'm going to reference fucking Keir Starmer in his race to fade into a certain shade of wallpaper and never be seen again.
And
unfortunately, we know that Labour has a lot of advice coming from Labour UK, and I just think they should sit there and go, "You guys are fucking hashing this out as well. We'll take it from here."
And you're absolutely right, Chewy. This is the fundamental problem. Labour are focused on trying to win back that soft blue vote. People who voted for Jacinda in 2020, but then voted for National in 2023, 15% of the vote. And they're trying to bring that vote back softly, bringy, monkey over. And they're doing it by incrementalism. They're listening to Keir Starmer. They're not listening to Mamdani. They've rejected that. It's very incremental. It's very safe because they've just got to try and win that centre, and that's fine and dandy. If that's where Labour want to be, great. Somebody's got to do that job. But then the responsibility goes to the Greens to really have the much more radical agenda. And the reason why I thought, for all our progressive hopes, a Labour Green Māori Party government getting to 51% was really what we all wanted, was because in my mind's eye, we were going to see Te Pāti Māori and the Greens form an alliance, a
You're just
negotiating alliance, as you
yanking
go
on them.
into, and actually force Labour at the negotiation table into actually doing some really progressive stuff. And I mean, some of the Māori Party economic package and some of the ideas that they want to go with, a financial transaction tax, forcing ACC and KiwiSaver to invest much more into the New Zealand economy. Their top tax rate. I mean, they were focused on really pinging and hurting the poor. Pinging and hurting the rich to be able to provide for the poor. That was something I thought would be, fundamental and important if we want to see some true progressive policy passed. But without the Māori Party radicalism there, it's going to be up to the Greens to do that, and that's going to be made so much more difficult if New Zealand First to have a part of that government, because Winston will be a handbrake to almost everything that Labor and the Greens would want to do.
The other thing is, we talked about this exact thing last night, Marty, about the Labor's got to almost release the Greens to be those radicals. But if they're going to do that, Chippy also needs to fucking stop shooting them down. Oh, it's a bit far fetched. Like he's got to stop. He can't cut the legs out from under them being radicals, because they need them to be the radicals to pull the vote in. And we've always said that well, I've always said, I might be wrong, Labor's job is to sort of get that central position back and maybe drag some of those stragglers back. And the Greens' job is to activate that far left base that don't vote. And the way you activate them is to give them stuff that excites them. And if they're giving you stuff that excites them, and Chris Hipkins is going, well, not under my leadership, it's just like, just shut up. Just say negotiations happen after the election. Just say that, there's give and take in forming a government. We'll have to see. That's not our position, but we'll have to negotiate with them. We're going to get some wins. They're going to get some wins. You don't have to immediately go, oh, nah. You know what I mean?
And this is and this is really the challenge, I think, for the Greens. I think they're going to have to be a little bit more punchy, slappy with Labor next year, to be completely honest. Whenever they criticise National, they should also add, "Oh, and Labor's not much better." I just think they've got to constantly niggle that and force that issue. There has to be some creative tension there, some ideological tension between the two parties, or we're not going to get the kind of. People have done it so hard now for 2 years. If we can't provide anything meaningful to those people's lives in terms of the material betterment, why are they going to come out and vote for us? They won't. They won't come out and vote for us. And in terms of the cultural stuff, our message has got to be clear. It's not some kid down the bloody road who's transitioning who's your enemy. It's not some Māori who's your enemy, or an environmentalist the enemies are who there's always fucking been: the banks, the corporations, big dairy. We've got to have an agenda that really pings those buggers.
Yeah.
But class war.
Let me just say
No
one
war
more
but
thing.
class war.
Let me say one more thing, because there's a bit in the chat, a couple of comments that are flowing past talking about Labor. Labor's not looking for my vote. That's why they speak like that. I'll just leave it at this. If anyone in Labor makes a statement that if printed on a newspaper you didn't know whether it was Labor or Luxon, that's the wrong statement to make, Labor. That's all I'm asking for. Don't make statements that people could go, oh, was that Luxon that said that? That's all I'm asking for. That's it.